There are some famous quotes that often get quoted wrongly. Here's one I'm sure everybody who watches YouTube is familiar with. The root of all evil is money. We all know it's the love of money is the root of all evil. That's a big difference because money, wherever the money is, right, is simply a tool. The tool is not evil. It is the love of the tool that is evil, right? I mean, it's like a chainsaw. The chainsaw is evil. No, the chainsaw is only evil like in the movie Scarface. Then it was evil. But most of the time it's just a tool. A chainsaw is a tool. Same thing with money, and I think we all know that. Now, this goes on to the meat of this video. Oh, before I continue, I'll show you my Federal Reserve ticket. They give you a PDF file and you print it out. And when I was walking around the building, I kind of looked clueless. The moment I pulled this out, the Federal Reserve guard was, hey, the interest over here, because they got their eyes peeled. Okay, so anyhow, oh, and someone left a comment saying that the Federal Reserve people, they have to be like in the top 1% of shooters or something like that, so the guys have like really good aim. Pow! Okay, so going back to the quote, the famous quote from Thomas Jefferson. He said, if the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all property. The quote is longer, but I took the meat of the quote. Now there are two key points I think that are gotten wrong or are said wrong. The first one is, first by inflation, then by deflation. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation. That is a key point. Because if you have constant inflation, the people will prepare for it and not be deprived of their property. For example, if there is always inflation like 2%, that means as soon as you get your paycheck, you can take precautions with your savings. It means everybody can build inflation into their expectations. So basically, Jefferson didn't say, if you have a private bank control the issue of the currency. He said a private bank first by inflation, then by deflation. There are two key points in there. First by inflation, then by deflation. And we've seen this. Okay, we've had decades where we've had only constant inflation. For a period of decades, right? Americans prospered, their wealth grew. They were not deprived of their wealth. We had inflation one direction, people were doing well. Of course, there's more to that than just inflation deflation, but basically, the people in America were not deprived of their wealth, and as a country, the wealth grew. Okay, let's look what has happened like in the last decade or so. There's a big transfer of wealth going on. When did this transfer of wealth go on? Then by deflation. Because what happened was, it was the fake out. We had the inflation, stock market went up, housing went up. In 2008, the deflation began. The stock market went down. People would panic. They get out of the market. And then what happened is with the stimulus, the market goes up. And these small-time investors, if they want to hop back in the market, they lost money. Also, too, it's because the public usually chases information in the markets. They'll buy high. Housing prices are high, the public buys. The prices go lower, they're punished. Here's the second point about deflation, is we did have deflation for a period of time, like in the 19th century. But yet, the people's wealth was not stolen by the banks. When you have a constant thing that people can prepare for it, it's when you zigzag. Inflation, deflation. That's where the punishment begins for the people. Okay, the second part. It's the banks and corporation that grow up around the central bank. So, what Jefferson is saying is the Federal Reserve is not the one that will deprive you of your property. It is the banks and corporations that spring up around the Federal Reserve. So when we look what happened in 2008 in the bailouts, those were the banks and corporations that sprung up around the Federal Reserve. They are the ones who had preferred treatments. Those are the ones who got all the bailouts and all this cheap money and loans. Because what happens is when you got the inflation, it's going up. They're making money on the way up. Then it crashes. JP Morgan gets on the phone. Jamie Dimon gets on the phone with Bernanke. Send me a cool trillion. I don't know the exact number, and then boom, Bernanke sending the cool trillion to Jamie Dimon. So you have the market crashes. The Wall Street firms get basically money at no cost. They buy up all these assets. The market goes up. They pay back their loans. And now they've got free stuff. And that free stuff came from the marketplace. And the general public who's trailing on the news, the wealth is transferred from the people to these banks and corporations that sprung up. Okay? The private bank was the enabler. The central bank was the enabler, but the wealth didn't go to the central bank. As Jefferson said, the wealth went to the Goldman Sachs and the JP Morgans. But there's more to this than this, right? If you notice, there are people on my channel who are traders who comment, and they're fans of the Federal Reserve System. But wait a second, right? Not only the big banks can get on this game, a lot of these small-time traders can get in on the game. And that was a quote from here. There was some quote from here where someone famous said that in this system, those who understand it will be too fascinated by the profits. So I think what's happening is we have a lot of these traders, like they leave comments, they have an understanding of the system. And they're making money in this system. They're fascinated by the profits. Now we have the small-time investor who doesn't understand it. They're the ones who are being deprived of their property. But there's another philosophical argument, is that some of these traders are saying, hey, a fool and their money are soon parted. Anybody can figure the system out. Well, that's a different discussion. But the point of this video was to explain the quote that Jefferson said. And it's first by inflation and then by deflation. Jefferson didn't say that if a Federal Reserve had only inflation, that the Federal Reserve would take your property. Jefferson said that if the Federal Reserve has inflation and deflation, the corporations and banks that spring up will take the property, not the Federal Reserve. So this is what the quote says. And this is not me being for the Reserve, Federal Reserve. I'm not trying to be for it. I'm trying to explain the quote. Because what I'm thinking is I want to protect my wealth. And then if they're going to give us inflation and then deflation, and then inflation and then deflation, I want to figure this thing out. I think you should too. I think if you're hooked on only the inflation part, you might fall into the trap that Thomas Jefferson says will be laid before you. And so thanks for watching. And this is only like a current opinion and an editorial I'm saying, right? And also, Don Harold talked about this before, so I'm not the first one to talk about this. I know a lot of people don't like him. You don't have to like him. You don't have to like anybody. But if you get an original opinion, consider what the original opinion is, and if it'll make you think. So thanks for watching.